When discussing poverty, it is important to address the causes and consequences, as well as some possible solutions, in ways that respect the dignity of all people. An important part of respecting this dignity of all people, however, is acknowledgement of cultural differences which may make addressing these causes and consequences far more difficult than they may initially seem. While respecting the dignity of all people is important, there is a fine line to walk between defining culture and victim blaming. As Mario Small says in his essay, Reconsidering Poverty and Culture, prior studies into culture and its relation to poverty seemed to imply that people might cease to be poor if they changed their culture. This implication is a dangerous violation of the dignity of every person. Replacing someone's culture with an optimized way to escape poverty is a very quick path to create a class of people with a very low quality of life. This cannot be allowed to happen. But why is culture so important? Something to remember when studying poverty is that well-intentioned practices or policies are not always effective. For example, in an effort to reduce racial discrimination, a number of cities banned the box that an applicant checks when applying for a governmental job that asks what race the person identifies as. The thought process being, if the employer does not know the applicant's race, it will make it impossible to discriminate, either knowingly or unknowingly. Despite the good intentions, this actually led to higher levels of discrimination because, in absence of the box, employers would look at other parts of the application in order to try and decipher the applicant's race. This example of well-intentioned but ill-effected policymaking is exactly the kind of thing that can be avoided by studying culture. Mario Small uses the Southern Sudanese Dinka as an example of a policy that went astray as a result of culture. To combat malnutrition, agencies distributed food to kinship leaders, who would then distribute it to households that were malnourished. However, it was found that the food distributed to the households were not being given to the individuals who were malnourished, but rather distributed throughout the household. In the Dinka cultural tradition, it is customary to share food throughout the household to everyone, equally. This makes an ineffective strategy to administer the food directly to the people. Thus, the aid being administered is essentially being wasted without any real impact on those who need it most. Without a proper understanding of cultural implications, this type of aid administration could become rampant. Understanding culture also helps answer some of the questions that someone donating to a charity might ask. Where's my money going, or how is it helping? As Nobel Prize-winning economist Esther Duflo mentions in her TED Talk, sometimes it is uncertain that the money being donated to a certain cause is actually making a difference. Understanding culture can help eliminate the situation where, like with the Dinka, money is being thrown away. This is good not just for those being helped, but it can also create better press for the charity actually helping the Dinka and allow them to help other such groups. Now, this is certainly not to say that the culture of the Dinka should be changed to make the policy more effective. This would effectively rob them of their autonomy. But the policy should be changed to take into account the culture and, in fact, effectively harness said culture. Instead of directly handing out more food, address why people are hungry in the first place. Is there a water shortage causing crops to die? We should design new irrigation routes. Is there simply a lack of crops to begin with? Then seed drives and agricultural education would probably be the way to go. Though these are simple, fairly uninformed answers, as I'm not an expert on the matter, they are examples of how to utilize the cultural elements that were at first a problem. Sharing of food is an evolutionary advantage that is designed to help the community flourish as a whole. Growing food will allow for the community to take care of itself and avoid what many critics of welfare programs are so afraid of, a reliance on welfare, thus creating a cycle of reliance on donations. But what is culture in the first place? One aspect of culture that Small, Harding, and Lamont highlight in their article is the idea of repertoire. Each group, and thus culture, has a set of actions in its repertoire, and an individual will rarely complete actions that are outside their group's repertoire. For example, applying to college, riding a bike, or swimming. If no one in a family has gone to college, the chances of anyone going to college in that family are very low. Not impossible, but very low. Or if no one in the town knows how to swim, they will all generally stay away from the water and never learn how to swim. Now, this is an example of the repertoire of a group, of an affinity group, going into action. Another component of a definition of culture is the traditions, language, social norms, and general knowledge of any group of people. According to this definition, culture applies to almost any affinity group that exists in the world, from neighborhoods to ethnic and racial groups. Though it may be hard to study so many groups at the same time, a comprehensive understanding of the culture of a group is vital. For example, according to the Pew Research Center, there are higher levels of concern about violence in teenage pregnancy among lower income parents. This survey looks at one possible culture affinity group, the parents of lower income parents. However, to reinforce the findings, it might be prudent to back up these findings with studies of more specific groups. Surveying specific neighborhoods, for example, that are culturally similar and contain members of the lower income parent groups. Additionally, understanding the culture of these affinity groups can help address some of the problems. Looking at why these parents have such worries can help treat some of the symptoms. This leads to another benefit of utilizing culture when helping to address poverty. That benefit is possible interaction with those who are in need of help. It's easy to sit in a philosopher's comfortable armchair and ask vague theoretical questions, however, or propose humiliating, dehumanizing answers. Understanding a group's culture, however, requires interaction between the group and the person trying to help on a deeper level. This level of interaction grounds the solutions that are proposed in reality and garners the consent of those whom the solution is being exercised on. The mark of a truly educated person may be that they can be moved by statistics, but it is regardless incredibly difficult to be moved in such a way. Interaction on a personal level removes the necessity to be moved by statistics, allowing the person to witness the full effect of the thing which they are trying to help remedy. This interaction also helps build trust between the group that is in need, in order to discuss and remedy the causes and consequences in ways that respect the dignity of all people. It is important to have the consent of those who the remedy affects. Again, this deeper level of interaction will go a long way in building the trust needed from those affected by the remedy to actually accept it. To see someone out and about as opposed to someone who proposes legislation from their gold tower. In conclusion, if treating people with dignity is a cornerstone of helping people out of poverty, it is essential to this end to understand the culture of the people you are trying to help. It avoids needless spending of money, creates a more trusting environment, and overall ensures that what an organization is doing is actually living up to the well-intentioned goal it set out to